Good afternoon and welcome to Chemspec Europe's digital presentation series and the inaugural webinar brought to you by UBE. It is my pleasure to introduce Sathida Mahampasak, Business Development Manager of EMEA and North America, Dr. Chika, API Manufacturing Technology Group and Senior Scientist, and Mr. Iwata, API Manufacturing Technology Group Head. Before I will hand over to Sathida, I would like to remind the audience that the session will be recorded, and we do invite attendees to write in their questions that they have for the Q&A at the end of the presentation into the question box on the dashboard. We will try to get to everybody. Please bear with us, and of course, for those questions that we do not have time for, we will get back to you, or UBE will get back to you to answer your questions individually. So without further ado, I shall hand over to Sathida and let her start the presentation.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for the kind introduction. Today we are very pleased to start this new webinar focused on our UBE novel fluorine compound. If we now go on the next slide, we will see that we have like about 40 minutes to discuss about, introduce our UBE novel fluorine compound, and then we will leave 15 minutes of Q&A sessions. Let's move to the next slide. We will introduce then the history and the role of the fluorine in medicinal and agrochemical chemistry. Then we will introduce the two types of UBE fluorine compound. First, we have the fluoride, which is the best nucleophilic fluorinating agent and the new reagent to get CF3. And the second type is the aromatic SF5 compound, which is the best alternative against CF3. Let's then move to the next slide to the history and the role of the fluorine in the medicinal and agrochemical chemistry. In the next slide, you see that we will begin with the fact that I would like to explain briefly how the fluorine containing compounds impacts greatly in all aspects of the modern life, but especially in the application of pharmaceuticals and agrochemicals. The first fluoropharmaceuticals was the fluorocortisone, also called fluoronef acetate, brought to the market in 1954. However, fluorinated compounds were rare in medicinal chemistry until the 1970s. The synthetic methodology at this time was quite limited to the use of elemental fluorine, or HF, both of which required the use of specialist and dedicated equipment. You can see here on this graph a significant increase of the fluoropharmaceuticals after the introduction of the nucleophilic fluorinating agent DAST, so-called the diethyl aminosulfur trifluoride, in 1975, especially because it was difficult to handle and use the HF. Even though DAST participates to the growth of fluoropharmaceuticals, there still remains many issues, such as safety in industrial use because of its poor thermal stability and the extreme moisture sensitiveness. Next slide, please. We go now to the latest trends about the fluoropharmaceuticals. Over the last 50 years, the contribution of organofluorine compounds to the pharmaceutical industry have increased steadily, and the number of fluoropharmaceuticals approved for use reached in 2019 340. For instance, if we look at the last 3 decades, the total number of fluoropharmaceuticals accounted for 20% of small molecule drugs, whereas in the last 5 years, we have an average of 35%. Next slide, please. Here on this slide, you can see several reasons that explain the main prevalence of fluoropharmaceuticals. The first one, fluorine is, after hydrogen, the second smallest atom, which means it replacing H by F will not drastically change the parent structure. Second reason, the fluorine forms the strongest single bonds with carbon. Increase the metabolic stability of the fluoropharmaceutical. Third one, fluorine exhibits the highest electronegativity in the periodic table of elements. It provides a higher lipophilicity of the compound. And finally, fluorine acts as a weak hydrogen bond acceptor. It can be used as a bioisoster of the hydroxyl group. The continued success of fluoropharmaceuticals strongly suggests to medicinal chemists that choosing fluoroorganic molecules is a potential strategy to significantly minimize the risk of unsuccessful trial and error attempt during the drug discovery process, judging from the probability theory. Thus, considering the role of fluorine in medicinal chemistry, the radioselective fluorination is highly demanding in the medicinal development field and can be conducted by fluorinating agents such as fluoride, which can lead to the most popular functional single F, CF2, CF3 in one step. We move now to the next slide. We see that despite the higher cost of fluorine containing synthetic building blocks relative to their non-fluorinated counterparts, the fluoroagrochemicals have maintained a position as a strong competitors to non-fluorinated pesticides. It is indeed striking that every year, more than 50% of the compounds which new ISO common name are fluoroorganic compounds. The average of the last 5 years, let's say almost 2/3, shows the significant impact that fluoroagrochemicals have. Biological efficacy is becoming more important than the disadvantages associated with the production costs of fluorinated compound, thanks to the synthetic methodology to obtain them. Next slide. If we now have a look of the chemotype distribution of fluoroagrochemicals, we can see that more than 50% of fluoroagrochemicals come from fluorofunctionalized aromatic compound, based on 541 entries on the left side of the graph. The aromatic CF3 and the heterocyclic CF3 groups account for 35%. The compounds that contain CCF3 moieties account for 42% for fluoroagrochemicals versus 20% for fluoropharmaceuticals. If we compare with both sectors, the CF3 moieties has particular advantages for agrochemicals. Then we move to the next slide as a summary of my first part of my presentation. We can see a strong increase of the fluoropharmaceutical in the last years from 20%, the last 2 decades, to 35% for the last 5 years. The importance of fluorine in pharmaceutical and agrochemical mainly are thanks to the combination of the unique properties of ADME on drug candidates. The probability for succeeding to launch a drug will significantly increase, and the radioselective fluorination that can be conducted by fluorinating agents such as fluoride. The improved biological efficacy of fluoroagrochemicals proven in the last years offset the production costs. That's another fact. And finally, the fluorofunctionalized aromatic compound and compound with CF3 moieties are the main compounds in fluoroagrochemicals. So now we're going to move to the second part, the UBE novel fluorine compound. So if we go to the next slide, first, I would like to thank the organizer, Chemspec, to give this great opportunity to introduce our fluorine products. UBE decided to start the fluorine chemistry via a joint research with Professor Umemoto Sensei in 2005. He is very well known in the fluorine research chemistry, and he's a pioneer to find organic fluorinating compound. Our fluoride is a trade name, and the aromatic SF5 comes from the same method. We extended many fluorination technology thanks to Professor Shibata Sensei since 2013. These fluorine compounds are now commercially available, and for information, we have already started commercial production from 1 metric ton of fluoride for CMO. So on the next slide, you will see that the fluoride is a nucleophilic fluorinating agent, and it releases the F anion from the agent and gives fluorine onto the molecule. The structure of fluoride consists of the alkyl substitute benzene and SF3. The appearance of the fluoride is a solid and forms a very nice white crystalline solid. It shows the good flowability, thus enable us to handle it easily when we use it. For information, fluoride and the fluorination reaction were already published, and the details are described in the article below and can be freely downloaded from the link as you can see here. On the next slide, you will see now the development history of the fluoride. DAS is the common, the current common deoxyfluorinating agent. Its structure is a symptom of inorganic SF4 whose one fluorine replaced with the diethylamine. Due to the risk of explosion caused by lack of the thermal stability, the application is limited in the laboratory use and is difficult to expand the use in the commercial scale production. On top of that, it is highly moisture sensitive and the fume immediately appears when we open the bottle, so many difficulties to handle even in the lab. In terms of overcoming this difficulty of handling the dust, it is required to have a more stable fluorinating agent and the ease to use it. To settle this problem, we focus on the bond energy and design an optimal molecular structure for fluorination, and finally found the fluoride. This fluoride luckily showed the good fluorination, especially the oxofluorination ability with higher thermal stability up to 170 degrees, and the hinder structures give enough stability against the moisture. It allowed us to handle it in the open air for a short time. On this picture, you can see any fume. You cannot see any fume when we put in the water on this picture of the fluoride. Since the fluoride is solid, then it helps us easy waiting conditions for the reaction. That's why we have introduced it to the market. Next slide, please. The deoxyfluorination is a reaction that can be substituted oxygen to fluorine. If the organic molecule has oxygen, it could be changed to fluorine by this reaction, which means that alcohol converted to single fluorine compound, ketone and aldehyde to geminal difluoride, and carboxylic acid to CF3. SF4 can work, but nobody can be used in the lab scale. And DAS is very common, but only applicable in the enolized ketone and aldehyde only, and with very low thermal stability. So fluoride is our alternative as of SF4 and can convert different substrate to the fluoro compound in a safe conditions for handling. Next slide, please. On this slide, we can see easily that the main advantages of our fluoride versus the other fluorination agents. Our customers are slowly shifting from DAS to fluoride because it is more thermally stable, less moisture sensitive, and ease of handling. It requires only one stop for the deoxyfluorination. And finally, fluoride is the only nucleophilic fluorination agent to be able to deoxyfluorinate ketone, the non-enol form, and the carboxylic acid. On the next slide, you will see that recently we succeeded to optimize this reaction conditions to convert the acyl fluoride to the corresponding CF3 by using fluoride and HF pyridine under neat conditions, 24 hours and 70 degrees with an extreme high yield, 99%. However, if we do not use the HF pyridine, the reaction will not proceed. In the second example, if we use DAS instead of fluoride as the oxofluorinating agent, the reaction will occur, but at a very low yield, only 25%. But if we use the other competitive agent, such as deoxofluor, ixtalfluor, or TBAT, the reaction will not proceed at all. This deoxofluorination can be applied to several types of group for aromatics, heterocyclic, and aliphatic. This technology was published, and we are very proud to introduce it during this webinar. Now, let me introduce in the next slide the tip for workup regarding the flow lead. The flow lead itself converts to the corresponding sulfonyl fluoride, that is the aromatic SOF in the skin. This aromatic SOF is allowed to react with alkaline solution, such as KOH, and give some side product. In addition, the sulfur in the aromatic SOF receives the multi-step complex disproportionation reactions during the hydrolysis. Thus, it finally forms the aryl thiosulfonate. This side product is not a polar one, so we can easily separate by conventional method with column chromatography. Now, on the next slide, you will see a new workup method. You know that removal of the flow lead side product has been a major problem when users want to obtain the target fluoride in high purity. We are also developing other workup methods. So far, we have developed the alcohol method and the oxidation method. And recently, we have developed an amino alcohol method, which can remove the aromatic SOF easily and effectively. This workup number 3, as you see at the bottom, can remove the aromatic SOF conversions into the water layer as salt of amino groups with acids such as acetic acid. User can select this workup according to the properties of the target fluoride. If we now look on the next slide, the summary for flow lead. Flow lead is initially developed for scientists to the use in the lab. It has very similar properties as SF4, but nobody can handle the SF4 in the lab, contrary to the flow lead as alternative. There's a high temperature that could be applied, 170 degrees. You could overcome difficult fluorination reaction thanks to the high temperature. And now we're glad to introduce you today this innovative way to get the CF3 from acyl fluoride. Flow lead can be purchased from reagent supplier, and we have already started commercial production, and we can provide technical support if required. And lastly, we are also preparing to provide fluorinating technology under GMP. That was the first part of the noble fluorine compound with the flow lead. Then we move now to the SF5 compound. So we move to the next slide. Let me introduce the synthesis of our aromatic SF5, so-called Umemoto method, or called KF-Cl2 reaction. Starting material is a thiol or disulfide, which is oxidized with chlorine in the presence of KF in acetonitrile. This gives the corresponding flow lead aromatic SF4 or the aromatic SF4Cl. The charging amount of KF and Cl2 makes the difference. If excess of these two, it will lead to the aromatic SF4Cl. The second reaction with aromatic SF4Cl is allowed to react with hydrogen fluoride at room temperature and give the corresponding SF5. This is Umemoto method, patented and published in 2012 with joint research with UBE. As you can see, KH, KF, Cl2, and HF are all available bulk material and easy to get supply, thus the attractive price to produce the SF5. Now we move to the next slide, and I'm glad to introduce you our aromatic SF5 compound as the best alternative to CF3. These compounds with SF5 group, also called super trifluoromethyl group, are used as building block for pharmaceuticals. In general, SF3 is a very common building block in pharma, but SF5 compounds have much better properties than CF3, mainly because of these three following reasons: better thermal and chemical stability, stronger electron withdrawing effect, and outstanding lipophilicity. If now we have a look on the first property, the high thermal and chemical stability. Why the SF5 is so stable? Because the aromatic SF5, the organic symptom of SF6, SF6 is extremely chemical stable, like inert gas and non-toxic gas. If SF5 is put in a strong alkaline solution with 100 degrees, you will see no decomposition. Even in strong acid condition mixed with concentrated sulfuric acid at room temperature, no hydrolysis in 100 degrees. Whereas for the CF3, it will be totally hydrolyzed in 95 conditions, same conditions, 95 degrees in same conditions. Then we move to the next slide and you will see that there's a strong electron withdrawing effect of the SF5 compound on the first table compared to CF3 and the outstanding lipophilicity in the second table versus the CF3. If we now move to the next slide, you will see a study about SF5 group in pharma area that is a bioisoster of the tertiobutyl group. The SF5 is smaller than the tertiobutyl group. As you may know, the tertiobutyl group is electron donating group, thus electron density in the benzene ring is very rich. And you can see here on the right side. If you replace this group with the SF5, then the large electron deficiency in the benzene ring will occur because SF5 is a strong electron withdrawing effect. This is very interesting because we can freely control the electron distribution on the benzene ring by introducing fluorine containing function groups. Now we move to the next slide that shows the SF5 safety assessment. The SF5 contains benzene compounds which are flammable, but the flash point is quite high. The lowest unsubstituted SF5 show 48 degrees, which is the same as kerosene commonly used at home. Regarding the toxicity, this kind of SF5 compound shows the Ames test with negative results and also the acute oral toxicity. Actually, the 4-MPSF shows the higher toxicity from 50 to 300 milligrams per kilogram, but not so high. It is classified as toxic compound in the UN regulation system, but the packing group is class 3, is the lowest in the category. SF5 aromatic are very stable. Actually, SF5 can be applied to various kinds of conventional reaction system without any damage on SF5 group. For example, we can see the SF5 substituted iodine benzene receiving the palladium catalyzed cross-coupling reaction and give the product in high yield. The SF5 can also be used for nucleophilic reactions such as on the right side, the lithiation and the Grignard reaction. Now let's move to the next slide and you will see our large portfolio for aromatic SF5 compound with the basic one to the amino, bromo, chloro, hydroxyl for instance. Also, our method can provide a compound containing these SF5 groups on the benzene. We're also preparing to provide as a service the fluorinating technology on the GMP on top of the SF5 compound. Let's move on to the next slide. You will see here all the application of SF5 compound on drugs. You can see actual example in pharma area. The use of SF5 is corresponding to CF3. The Bayer example showed a very high potency, 10 times higher than CF3. So we will move now to the next slide as a summary of SF5 compound. Our innovative SF5 compounds called Super CF3. Why? Because it's very uncommon compound and our technology managed to give the accessibility of this compound. It's a very stable compound. And as I mentioned before, there's a high lipophilicity and high electron withdrawing effect. We should also keep in mind that it's a large size. just smaller than terbutyl. SF5 group is bigger than CF3 group and give a different activity relationship, large enough to fulfill, for instance, a pocket of protein. And there's a great alternative of the CF3 compound, which is very common. So you can use it to open to new discovery molecules. Also, to let you know, we have a pilot plant scale available with 80 kilograms per batch, and UBE can provide technical support for the use of SF5 fluorinating technology under GMP. So on the next slide, I would like to send our acknowledgement to the two professors who discovered and developed our fluorine compound for the fluoride and the aromatic SF5 compound, Dr. Umemoto Sensei and Professor Shibata Sensei. So thank you to all of you for attending our pharmaceutical webinar on novel fluorine compound. You see on the next slide, if you have any question, we will be pleased to answer to them. And the next slide. And finally, still next slide, yeah. If you're interested to receive our presentation material, you could write us an email on this one below, fluorine@ube.com. Thank you for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Safida. That was great and very informative. Now, we have actually got a couple of questions that have come in, and I will direct these to you three. You tell me who's going to ask or who's going to answer them. First one was, can spent fluoride be recycled?
Oh, thank you for your question. This is Iwata speaking. I will answer this question. So far, we haven't examined the recyclable fluoride feature spec in the fluorination. With regards to the using fluoride, it would be difficult for us to establish cost-efficient process, including the recycled fluoride.
Okay, that was the one question answered. Thank you very much. Next one was, just bear with me 1 second. What's my question box is not quite expanding to the way I want it to. Here we go. Does a fluoride convert phenol to fluorine? I think the question was because alcohol was mentioned in the presentation.
Good question, and thank you for your question. So far, we haven't examined the convert of phenol to fluorobenzene with fluoride. As for alcohol, primary alcohol would be promising to be converted to the fluorine compound, but second or aromatic alcohol, probably it will be difficult to convert to fluorine compounds with fluoride.
Okay. Okay, I hope that answers your question. The next one, could you provide fluorinating technology on top of providing fluorine compounds because we don't have adequate vessels?
Thank you. Now, UBE industries are not only providing products with our fluorine compounds, and we can also add the services related to the fluorinating technologies. For example, we can advise on fluorinating technology with fluoride and introduce our manufacturing partners.
Okay, wonderful. And what is the commercial price of fluoride?
So, Chida, can you give answers to this question?
Oh,
Sorry,
I think my question box is just.
I mean, in general, it will depend on the quantity. So for that, you could send us an email, on the fluorine at ube.com, you know, the price is not the same if we're talking about 1 kilogram, 100 kilogram, or 1 metric ton. So, but you should know that the price should be, it's very competitive, very attractive, because we now can produce in a large scale, knowing that we have a very important partner that can, as we mentioned, we can produce like about 90 kilogram per batch for the flow lead, and we are currently working up to 100 kilogram per batch for one of the SF5 compounds. So we have the capability, we provide the full package product and services, and we would love to receive your request for quotation, and we will reply to you directly based on the volume and the request. Thank you.
Excellent, and thank you for that. And then we've got one more question. What's the soil persistence of the SF5 compounds? Is it better than with CF3?
Thank you for your question. Compounds such as monofluoroaromatics can be completely mineralized by bacteria, whereas trifluoromethyl substitute aromatics are typically partially degraded or co-metabolized. SF5 can be degraded with light under mild, environmentally relevant conditions. The toxicity of the metabolized SF5 substitute compounds is not yet determined. That's my answer.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. I think if there's any other questions coming in from the audience, otherwise we would be. Oh, okay, there is one. Yep. Have you technology to introduce SF5 group into heteroaromatics with a reagent? Is that something that you can answer?
Wait a minute. So far, our UBE Industries doesn't have a intent to introduce SF5 group directly to this substrate.
つけてる後もピジンとか。
ピジンとかどういうことですか?
Okay. Is that, sorry, was there something else to the end of the question?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, in that case, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your questions. This was very informative, and we also do have some polling questions that we would greatly appreciate you participating in. I'm happy to do them one after the other. So Theda, are you happy with that?
Yes, that would be nice. Thank you.
Excellent.
Christian.
I will launch this now. Everybody, if you could have a look and would take part, that would be fantastic. So Theda, would you like me to share them with everybody?
Yes, please,
yeah,
definitely.
We'll just
Thank you, Christian.
wait a little bit longer. I think there's probably still a few people thinking of it, haven't yet participated. Okay. Okay, I think I'll close the poll now and share the results. Can you, did you want to take us through that, Sathida? If you can see the poll result?
I appreciate that you all, you know, we have like 4 questions about the poll. So it's very important to know who is our audience and how we can, you know, reply the best to the needs of our customers. So the more we know our customer, the better we can also provide the best product to you.
Brilliant.
Thank you for that.
I will open the next question. This one is about whether you already use fluorine compounds. Here we go. Okay. Okay. Well, for all those that don't or haven't used fluorine compounds, I hope that today's webinar has given you more information to reach out to UBE. Also at the live event at Chemspec in only a few weeks' time. I think we're 13 weeks until we go, and we'll see you hopefully all in Frankfurt. Okay, I think that I'm just going to close this poll now. I think we're all good. There we go. You can all see.
It is interesting to know that most of you knows about the fluorine compounds, and I hope that you appreciate the presentation and you learn very interesting information about this webinar.
Then what are the most important factors in drug discovery for fluorinating agents? Okay, just wait another minute here. I think, yeah, most people are still giving their responses. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. And share that with you, Sathita. You can have a look.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, but it's interesting to see that these three, let's say, properties are the one that was required for the fluorinating agent. Honestly, we could not put like more information on the others. I would have loved to hear what was the 11% others. But if you would like to share, you can just write us an email as thefluorine@ube.com. I think we have another last question, and then we're done with the webinar for today.
Yes, that's right. Last one. What are the most important factors in pharma agrochemical material science for building blocks containing fluoride? Just going to launch that now. Excellent. Brilliant. I think we've gathered the information there. I'm closing the poll now and sharing it with you, Sathita.
Okay, it's very interesting. So again, thank you for just participating in this poll. It's very helpful for us. And if you would like to contact us or get more information about our UBE novel fluoride compound, I would be pleased to support you. And I think that's it for today. Do you want to say something else, Christian?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for their attendance, and you will receive a recording of this webinar at the end. So, and again, of course, do reach out to either the Chemspec Europe team or in fact UBE directly, and we would look forward to hearing from you and also seeing you in Frankfurt in a very short time for a live event after a long time of being away. Okay, thank you everybody, and we will see you soon. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye bye.